Hi everyone, my name is Casey Astrology and I'm an astrologer and card reader with the Cards of Truth system. And today I've decided to share with you a Cards of Truth life spread reading for the rapper Drake. So this is going to be a pretty in-depth and detailed reading just because that's how I do all my client readings. And I have a really active Venus in my chart. I have a lot of Venusian influences in my own natal chart, so that's just how I roll. I like to go in depth, and yeah, even though Drake's not paying me, that's what I'm going to do with his reading. Okay, so let's get started. So, as you can see, Drake's birth card is the Queen of Hearts. I would say that this probably isn't too common of a birth card. It appears about 6 times in a year, but it is a very special birth card just because it's a face card. And the way that this system works, just to give you a brief kind of synopsis of the Cards of Truth, it was created by the tropical Vedic astrologer Ernst Wilhelm. And basically, it's a system of cartomancy that uses the 52 card playing deck to basically read someone's natal chart using the cards and their planetary placements and their planetary cusps, just as you would be able to see in a natal chart reading. But yeah, it's using the playing cards, and it can get really in-depth and accurate. And so I'm hoping to show you that today through Drake's birth spread reading. Okay, so yeah, as I was saying, Drake is a Queen of Hearts. And if you're not familiar with Drake, he's a multi-platinum selling recording artist and Canadian rapper. And so this is his birth spread. So let's start at the beginning. Drake was born on October 24th, 1986 at 2:31 a.m. in Toronto, Canada. And the interesting thing about Drake's birth card actually is that if he was actually born after sunrise, he would technically be a Jack of Hearts and not a Queen of Hearts. And this is because the date of October 24th, which is Drake's birthday, is actually a Jack of Hearts card day instead of a Queen of Hearts. But the way that this Cards of Truth system works is that if you're born after sunrise on your day of birth, then you get the card for that day. But if you were born before sunrise, as Drake was, so he was born at 2:31 a.m., he inherited the card for the previous day, which was the Queen of Hearts. So on the date of October 23rd, the birth card for that day was the Queen of Hearts. And because Drake was born on October 24th before sunrise, he is in fact a Queen of Hearts birth card and not a Jack of Hearts, which he would have been if he was born after sunrise. So I just wanted to explain that a little bit. I hope that's not too confusing. But yeah, that's an interesting thing about his birth card. So what does it mean to be a Queen of Hearts birth card? And specifically for Drake, what does it mean? That's what we're going to talk about in today's reading. So let's get started. Now, every birth card in the Cards of Truth system has like a catalyst or underlying card from which it was born out of, and an overlying card which it is naturally meant to evolve into. And the underlying card for Drake is this 10 of Spades that we can see right here in his birth card. So the underlying card, it's also referred to as the Jack card in this system. And the birth card itself is also referred to as the Queen card in this Cards of Truth system. And the overlying card is also referred to as the King card in this system. So in the case of the Queen of Hearts birth card, the underlying card is this Ten of Spades, which you can see again in this bottom left corner of Drake's birth card. And so in the Cards of Truth system, in most cases, this underlying card is what's responsible for creating the birth card and its role thus being fulfilled. So it serves as a foundation to the birth card, but it's not something that is pursued by that card in most cases. However, in the case of Drake or anyone born with the Queen of Hearts as their birth card, this isn't true because, as you can see, the Ten of Spades falls in their Saturn card as well. So what that means is the themes of the Ten of Spades are actually going to be fairly prominent in this person's life, in Drake's life. And so it's going to be a very cyclical pattern for this throughout Drake's life. It's going to involve this Ten of Spades very deeply rather than it just being a stepping stone if it were just his underlying card. So the Ten of Spades path that basically made Drake into the person he is today, and the path that he grew up walking, is the path of self-preservation, the path of discovering who he truly is as a person, learning his strengths, and learning to work and overcome his deep fears, weaknesses, and shortcomings in life. He's had to battle through a lot of drama when it comes to his personal relationships in order to initiate moments of personal breakthroughs and having self-realizations, and what would probably have felt like a lot of epiphanies throughout his life along the way. Because the Ten of Spades is very much the path of personal breakthroughs and personal growth that comes only through surviving and getting through extremely hard work, putting in a lot of work. The Spades suit has to do with sorrows, afflictions, worries, and it can have to do with war, strife, and disease as well. These are all characteristics of the Spades suit in the playing card deck. And the Ten of Spades represents the phase itself of the whole, it represents the path itself of that whole suit. And it's in his Saturn card. Saturn represents the cross we have to bear in life due to our past karmas. So this is a path that Drake will always be navigating throughout his life. However, it's from this difficult energy that his Queen of Hearts birth card was born. So because he had to go through all this stuff is why he became the Queen of Hearts in the first place. That's where this energy is born out of. And that's because the Queen of Hearts is his card for his entire life. And so it's his long-term card. Meaning he is the Queen of Hearts, which was born out of this difficult Ten of Spades energy. So let's talk about the Queen of Hearts and what it means to have it as your birth card. The Queen of Hearts is considered a very nurturing, loving card, and it's someone who really wants to connect and care for people. And so because of this, it's actually considered the mother card, a quality of the Queen of Hearts that is really prominent in Drake's character. Is probably his inclination for unconditional love, but more so in a tribal sense of the word, meaning that it's more so of sort of like a family love. And it's kind of the idea of, your family, so I love you. He's often praising and bigging up his OVO crew in a lot of his songs and in his interviews. And that's the group that's made up of his core support team. And they've basically been with him since he started his career. And some of them are actually family members for Drake, and some aren't. But for example, he talks about his longtime producer, 40, a lot in his music, and in his lyrics. Yeah, he's mentioned before how he wouldn't have gotten anywhere in his career without him, and how, he's always worrying about his health, which is a Queen of Hearts trait of being very protective, mothering, wanting to take care of him, protect him from becoming more ill, because he actually has a long-term illness. So, yeah, Drake also is known to shout out other members of his crew often, and kind of giving them notoriety in his songs. So some of these people have included one of his OVO crew members, Baka, aka Not Nice, P. Rain, Chubbs, Miko. These are all people that he mentions often in his song lyrics, and he's even sampled their voices at the end of a lot of his songs. And yeah, he's always often pledging to take care of these people for life because of the part they've played in enabling his success. And that very much is a Queen of Hearts trait as well. And earlier this month, when he won the Artist of the Decade award at the 2021 Billboard Music Awards, Drake even asked his entire OVO team, along with his parents, to be with him to present the award and to present him with the award and basically celebrate his accomplishments together. That's how important, his family, his crew is to him. And he also brought his son, Adonis, along as well. And Drake's manager, Future the Prince, even stated in his speech that Drake is the most selfless, kind, generous person that any of them know. And these really are quintessential Queen of Hearts characteristics, being selfless, being super loving, generous with their resources, their time, their love, things like that. So from the hardships and the struggles of the Ten of Spades is born this loving, compassionate artist who wants nothing more than to connect with the world, to serve their loved ones who've supported them through it all. That's basically how this Queen of Hearts plays out for him. And this brings us to another important role of the Queen of Hearts, which I haven't mentioned yet, is that the Queen of Hearts is actually an established artist or actor. That's what it represents in this system. So as a successful rapper and recording artist, Drake can tell you and show you the multi-platinum albums he's made. So he's not like a struggling artist or a starving artist like the Jack of Hearts might be. So that tells us right there, if Drake did end up being born a Jack of Hearts, he probably wouldn't have found the level of success that he has as the Queen of Hearts, being born when he was. So that's another interesting fact to think about. Some of Drake's songs that really capture this kind of tribal love energy that I've spoken about is Look What You've Done, No New Friends, and Worst Behavior. I really recommend listening to those songs to kind of get the feel of what the Queen of Hearts vibe is like. It really captures it perfectly. So then that brings us, this energy of the Queen of Hearts, tribal love, it brings us to what the card that he's meant to evolve into from that, which is the Nine of Clubs. And that's his overlying or king card. And this card is showing us what Drake is growing into And it's the goal card for the Queen of Hearts to realize, upon which the evolutionary purpose of the birth card has become fulfilled, with resultant peace and readiness to transcend its current level of being. Another important quality of the Queen of Hearts is that they're really willing to put in all the hard work to maturing their relationships, maturing their connections, maturing their social networks. They're really dedicated to putting in the work into these relationships and connections. But the thing about the Queen of Hearts is they're not going to be doing it for free. They need their love reciprocated, and they need that payment, because the queens in the deck do all the hard work, and they're really focused on sustained activity for the long term, but they need something given to them in return. They're not like the King of Hearts or the kings of the deck who just show up during an emergency and then they do their thing and leave. That's how the king cards work, because they're more specialized cards that are meant to make sacrifices for people in their lives without expecting anything in return for the greater good of their kingdoms. But the queen cards aren't like that. The queens in the deck are the cards that hold down the fort, and they're there day in and day out, taking care of things, taking care of their people, in the case of the Queen of Hearts. So they can really bring this mature love and really nurture all their relationships, but at a price. They need to feel like they're getting paid back in the same, with the same amount of love, effort, and care that they are expending into the relationships. They want the same energy back. And this is another common theme in Drake's music. For example, the song How About Now is a really good depiction of this aspect of the Queen of Hearts personality of wanting something in return for all of the love they're giving. So yeah, that's an interesting thing to think about. And then we have this Nine of Clubs overlying card, which is the card that the Queen of Hearts will eventually transform into. And so the Queen of Hearts is basically meant to evolve into this Nine of Clubs card. The Nine of Clubs is a card of creating long-lasting work, which is fueled by your inspirations. So it can be about completing long-lasting business deals where the things created from that business deal are really what's going to last. And this card can symbolize a person who locks themselves away in their office, writing away, poring over their work, someone who's incredibly focused on sharing their inspiration, creativity, and knowledge with the world. So it can be a card of generosity in that way. It's putting all your work out there so it's accessible to anyone, and therefore your artistry is able to inspire others, many other people. So it can be a very nice, solitary, contemplative card too, in that sense. And so, of course, we know that Drake is a successful Queen of Hearts recording artist. And he's a successful rapper, which means he has created a large music catalog already. And his music will be what everyone remembers about Drake after he's gone. It's going to be his legacy. So he definitely already is channeling his Nine of Clubs overlying card by creating his long-lasting legacy in the music industry. And, it wouldn't be surprising if at one point he wrote a book about his life in the music industry, or like a memoir or something like that, because that's also very much in line with the Nine of Clubs energy, which has to do with education as well. A song of Drake's that really captures his Nine of Clubs ambition and his career accomplishments is his song Trophies. That's a good one to listen to kind of really get what the energy of the Nine of Clubs is like. So now I'm going to talk a bit more about Drake's Saturn card, which is the Ten of Spades. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into this. So this is a significant card in Drake's life trajectory because, as I mentioned earlier, the Ten of Spades should technically be a card that comes naturally to him, but is not a card that he necessarily would spend a lot of time pursuing if it wasn't his Saturn card. But since it is his Saturn card for the Queen of Hearts birth card, this actually ends up being a card that's really important to them. And it's important to anyone who has this birth card, actually, not just Drake. They're going to spend a lot of time with this card. And as I mentioned earlier, it's really the card of the Saturn card is the cross that we have to bear in life. And the spade suit in general has a heavy focus on work and survival. So people with a lot of spades in their card spread, as Drake has, he has a lot of planets in these spade cards. They have a really heavy focus on work and survival. So they kind of tend to be workaholics or make a lot of self-sacrifices in order to complete their work. And Drake's most heavily emphasized card in his spread is the King of Spades. And then he has some planets in his Saturn card as well, the Ten of Spades. So we can see that this truly is the case in his life as well. And this quality about himself has contributed immensely to his success. So the Ten of Spades is the path of extremely hard work, and it's well known that Drake began his career in the entertainment industry as a teen in high school, so he was really young, which he raps about in his song Worst Behavior, where he reveals that he used to drive his Acura down to set at 5 a.m. to shoot episodes of the Canadian series Degrassi, Next Generation, which was a TV show. So he was an actor on that show when he was really young, and that's when he started working in the industry. The Ten of Spades also represents darkness and our fears. And what's interesting about that is that Drake has his planet Mars in this card. And Mars is actually the planet that shows how a person dates and the kind of relationship that they're comfortable with. That's what it represents in this Cards of Truth system. And he also has his 7th house cusp conjoined this Ten of Spades card as well. And the 7th cusp has to do with relationships and partnerships in our life. So this shows us that Drake's Ten of Spades Saturn card is very significant when it comes to his romantic relationships and business partnerships as well, or basically any partnerships in all forms. So this Ten of Spades tells us that Drake is comfortable with relationships that are basically filled with a lot of drama, darkness, and dark moods. These are the types of relationships he's become accustomed to throughout his life because of this card. And what he's really looking for in relationships are partners who will invest in him, because spades in relationships are looking for people to give them their time and energy. And basically, this is their physical selves as well. So lots of sex and intimacy. Emotionally, they really want someone to invest in them as well. Especially being a Queen of Hearts birth card, because the Queen of Hearts is about mature and unconditional love. So they only want to be in relationships that they can invest their time and energy in maturing, in furthering the relationship. So this 10 of Spades Saturn card here with Mars and Neptune in it, and the 6th and 7th house cusps show that Drake is looking for relationships where there's an equal exchange of energy going on. And ideally, he wants women who will help take some of his darkness and kind of inner demons off of him in exchange for the resources that he can provide them with in return, which is most likely his money, because Neptune is in this card, and Neptune is the planet that shows us how we connect to people. And the Neptune card itself shows our capacity for connectivity and the way in which we desire to connect with others. So the Neptune card itself is actually the 7 of Diamonds, which is one of the millionaire cards. So his connections and the way in which he desires to connect to people involves him spending money on them, essentially. The diamond suit represents wealth, value, and our concrete resources. And the 7 of Diamonds, in particular, is a card of transaction. So one of the ways that Drake connects through relationships is by exchanging his wealth and concrete resources for intimacy and love with the women he dates. That's his source of connectivity with the world and through his relationships. With the 7 of Diamonds, there's always something of value that's really important to you that needs to be let go of or given up before you can get more of what you want. And usually, especially in Drake's case, that's money. And of course, he's well known for spending lavishly on the women he's with. There was a story circulating in the media last year that revealed that Drake had spent millions of dollars collecting designer purses that he was planning on giving his future wife, which further illustrates, his charitable nature when it comes to his romantic relationships. And so, since Drake's Neptune is with Mars as well, Mars is actually called a malefic planet in Vedic astrology, and it's considered a separating planet or a separating factor. So the Karka, which is the Vedic word for planet, which represents a separating factor conjoining the planet of connectivity, which is Neptune, and the 7th house cusp of relationships and the spouse, can basically show that Drake has difficulty in making deeper connections to the women he dates, and there can be a lot of lack in his relationships, because the 7 of Diamonds is also the card of lack and things not working out in a concrete fashion. So his relationships can tend to produce a lot of longings, unrequited needs, and unrequited love, and more disconnect in general coming from his end because of the connectivity of Neptune. What he allows himself to connect with, and from his partners, bringing him this energy of discontent because of the influence of the 7th house cusp. And then, of course, the 6th house cusp is also there in this card, in the Saturn card. One of the nicer qualities of the 6th house cusp is that things will improve over time. So over time, our wounds improve. Over time, our enemies hopefully lessen. And so together with this 7th cusp, this can show that Drake's relationships where he has had a falling out or things ending on an unpositive note will also tend to improve for him over time after a period of no communication. Because Saturn, the ruler of the Saturn card, is in this Ace of Clubs Jupiter card. being delighted by Jupiter, as you can see in these fulfillment strengths down here of the planets. So an example of these kind of reconciliations in Drake's life is he had a reconciliation with Nicki Minaj after their falling out years prior. He's been able to salvage his relationship with Rihanna briefly after they stopped being friends and seeing each other. And then in a moment, we're going to also talk about the music industry. The music industry kind of feuds and battles that Drake has gotten into with his enemies, because the enemies are connected to the 6th house cusp and this 10 of spades Saturn card. But first, it's important to mention here that since Drake is a Queen of Hearts birth card, this actually makes the Neptune card the most important card in his spread for him. Because in the Cards of Truth system, which was again created by the tropical Vedic astrologer Ernst Wilhelm, as I mentioned when we started, the Neptune card is also known in Ernst's system as the Queen card because of its position in the spread, and Drake's birth card is a Queen of Hearts. So this Neptune card is connected really strongly to this Queen of Hearts birth card. So the 7 of Diamonds and the dynamics of this card are extremely important to who Drake is as a person. And this card becomes amplified even further in his spread because it's a red 7. And it falls in his Saturn card. And Saturn is the 7th planet in the chart. So there's already a Saturnian element there to the way in which Drake experiences connectivity to the world. The queens in the decks are the ones who do all the hard work, as I said. They symbolize the sustaining force energy in our lives. So what Drake is really working on in his life has a lot to do with being on this spades path, this 10 of spades path of hard work, making sacrifices for his career, putting all his energy into his relationships, his partnerships, his work, basically, romantic relationships and business relationships. And the 10 of spades is actually just an application of the ace of spades because in numerology, 10 is made up of a 1 and 0, and 1 plus 0 equals 1. So it all goes back to the ace of spades. And that, as you can see, the ace of spades is Drake's ecliptic card, or the path card in life that he's walking down. And this ace of spades represents the path of enduring activity that we pursue as part of the path of our birth card. So now we're going to talk a bit more about this ace of spades and what it means being the path that Drake's walking down in life. So it's the card you see when you're looking down at your feet as you're walking down the path of life. That's what this ecliptic card represents. And you're most likely going to notice this card more than your actual birth card because it's the actual road you're on. So this ace of spades is about discovering new and unexpected things about yourself that show you who you truly are. And usually these are difficult things like hidden truths about yourself, secrets coming to light, or having to muster the inner strength to bring something that you're working on into fruition. It's literally giving birth to something, and we all know that's not an easy thing to do. So oftentimes, these are really difficult experiences that you have to go through that really force you to make personal breakthroughs. And that's the path that Drake's walking down. So the Ace of Spades is not always a positive breakthrough. It can be a negative thing as well, like a disease, because the Ace of Spades symbolizes death of the self, which immediately makes room for rebirth. So that's something that you should keep in mind with the Ace of Spades card. But it can also just be difficult work, giving birth to your inspiration and trying to get it to see the light of day, literally, because in nature, the Ace of Spades is symbolized by a sprouting seed that cracks the ground under which it has lain for some time, as it's born out of the earth. So for Drake, this can have a lot to do with his creative process. And when it comes to his career, the songs he's writing as well, the impact he's trying to make in the music industry, we can really see this from this Ace of Spades ecliptic energy really flowing into his Ten of Clubs Sun card, because the sun represents our creative intelligence, inspiration, and career. And the sun card is the first card, and the Ace of Spades also is the first card, and the 10 of Clubs represents the 10th card. So they're interchanging energy, as you can see here. It's kind of flowing back and forth into each other. And it's also then flowing into his 10 of Spades Saturn card as well, because that maps back into this Ace of Clubs card through being in the 10th position. So it represents his work ethic and drive to succeed. And the way that this works is that the ecliptic is the 10th card in the spread, and the 10s represent the path of enduring activity, while the Ace of Spades is the first card, which represents the sun card of our kingdom and the natural abilities we're born with. So all of the 10 cards and aces in the spread and Drake's spread flow into each other to really help propel him forward in his music career. And this is because the spades as the first suit in the card deck represents our potentials, and our potential is determined by our discipline, work ethic, realistic attitudes, willingness to suffer the isolation necessary to succeed in anything great and long-lasting. Those are the most important qualities of the spades. And because Drake has an abundance of strong spades in his birth spread, it makes it easier for him to be an individual who does not allow the hardships or unfairness of life to be used as an excuse for failure. Spades have a lot of deep roots, and they draw upon the strength of these roots in times of needs. So they survive and continue onwards and succeed when others turn back to more comfortable and secure possibilities. And then the third suit, which is the club suit, represents all those things of mental energy, inspiration, creativity, communication, so writing, teaching, philosophies. So of these forms of of these kind of clubs things, inspiration is really the cornerstone of all actions that are coming from the club suit. So Drake has some clubs in his spread as well, as you can see. And so whether the clubs is writing, like Drake as a rapper, teaching, creating, communicating, or philosophizing, the club will only do so because of inspiration. So another interesting thing to remember about the spades and clubs suit is that the black suits in the card deck represent the masculine energy. And so this is an energy that doesn't come easily. You have to fight for the things of those suits and work hard for them, which is the opposite of the red suit, which is the feminine principle of receptivity. So things kind of flowing towards you rather than having to fight for them. So Drake being on the path of the Ace of Spades as his ecliptic shows that there will always be more of a struggle attached to the new spadesy things he's trying to give birth to, like writing new songs, creating albums, changing up his musical style for an album. So in that sense, it can be new problems that you basically have no idea how to handle because, again, the Ace of Spades is the new seed bursting forth from the soil. And because it's brand new, it's essentially a newborn that has no idea how to fend for itself. And it can be new trouble that you have no idea how to handle or that you even knew you were capable of such a thing. So an example of this kind of unexpected new truth or secret about himself in Drake's case would be, when he found out he was going to be a father unexpectedly. And that impact that would have had on him as a person as well as his lifestyle would have very much been like an Ace of Spades type of feeling. And also when it comes to his music, Drake has articulated a lot of this uncertainty and unknown feelings having to putting his music, making music and the brand new connotations of that. And that feeling, as well as this kind of King of Spades feeling as well, because that's a packed card for him. These two energies of the King of Spades and the Ace of Spades were perfectly articulated by Drake in his acceptance speech for his Artist of the Decade award at the 2021 Billboard Music Awards. Because in his speech he says, "I'm really self-conscious about my music, and even if I do a good job, I always wonder how I could have done it better. I rarely ever celebrate anything. And just for anyone watching this wondering how this happened, that's really the answer. It's being so unsure how you're going to get it done that you kind of just keep going in the hopes of figuring out the formula." And what he says next is really strong King of Spades energy, because the King of Spades is the king that's independent. It's basically an independent manager. And the King of Spades energy is about trying to permanently get past your limitations by making whatever self-sacrifices are necessary. So what he says next is, I know I've spent an incalculable amount of hours trying to analyze all the things that I've done wrong, but tonight, for once, I'm sure as hell we did something right. So I think that his speech really captured those two cards in his spread perfectly. Yeah. So next we're going to talk about the Seven of Hearts energy in his Uranus card. And this is another important card of Drake's that connects directly to his Ace of Spades ecliptic path card. And that's because, as you can see, the Seven of Hearts Uranus card is actually the underlying card for this Ace of Spades ecliptic card. The Uranus card in our spread is also referred to as the Jack card. It's driven by the creative impulse of Uranus. So whatever this card may be, it's the creative self with which the individual makes his individual mark upon the world. It is that different thing about the person that no one else can duplicate. And all cards in this position represent potential strengths to the individual, though difficult cards represent creative strengths that are aroused in times of need. So the Seven of Hearts is considered a difficult card. It's one of the breakup cards, actually. So simply put, Drake is most inspired to create musically when he's basically going through a breakup of a romantic relationship, or he's experiencing some kind of strong emotional disappointment or emotional setbacks, because the Seven of Hearts is considered one of the breakup cards in the deck. And red sevens represent Saturn and have a connotation of death. So the Seven of Hearts can be the death of love and of emotional attachments and emotional disappointments in love. But remember, there's no such thing as a bad Uranus card, having said that, because this card is really a source of potential strength. And of the three energies of the Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto card, of the energies of these three cards, the most enjoyable by far would be the Uranus card, because Uranus's position shows us where a lot of creative energy is going to flow through us. And the Uranus card is connected to the energy of the jacks in the deck. And the jacks in the deck have the most fun, being hyper creative, doing new exciting things. So this energy that flows through Drake of being able to channel his emotional heartbreaks into his writing, in his lyrics, and really make hit songs out of them, is what sets him apart from other rappers in his peer group within hip-hop. And intimate relationships, partnerships, and of course, breakups are what get his creative juices flowing. And the Seven of Hearts Uranus card really shows that although he's suffering at the time when relationships don't work out for him, he's been able to channel these emotional disappointments into a successful career. And in fact, he's created a whole new subculture of rap music by rapping about his feelings, breakups, love songs, longings, unrequited love, relationship regrets, emotional disappointments, etc. And that's really become his bread and butter. And he actually gets a lot of flack from other rappers in the industry as well, as hip-hop culture, the media, and fans, because of this style of music that he has. There's, a lot of Drake memes, basically kind of making fun of the fact that he's so sensitive and vulnerable in his music and always seems like he's wearing his emotions on his sleeve. But an important thing to know about Drake is that he's a Cancer moon. So what this allows him to tap into is his feminine energy of receptivity. And then, on top of that, he has a lot of planets in Scorpio and Pisces. So he's very watery in general. And there's a lot of deep emotional needs attached to the water signs of Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, especially Scorpio. So the Seven of Hearts is part of the heart suit. And the heart suit really represents our connectivity, sharing, inclusivity, and fulfillment. And this is why the heart suit has a lot to do with the arts, like music, painting, sculpting, acting, etc. Basically, actually particularly music, because it's so heavily involved with sharing and connectivity with the masses. That's what the arts allows us to do, and that's what the heart suit really wants to do. And of course, other than music, Drake started out his career in acting, so this Uranus Seven of Hearts card and the Ace of Clubs Jupiter that it falls in has really given him a strong background in artistry. And so we know that Drake's inspiration comes from his relationships and the lack of emotional stability that he experiences in them. But these experiences in his love life are what are fueling his creative intelligence, which is connected to the fifth cusp in his Jupiter card. And the fifth cusp has to do with knowledge, luck, and also intelligence. It's that God-given creative intelligence and imaginative intelligence that comes through us universally when we write, and it also can come through us as procreation and sexual energy as well, because the fifth house has to do with romantic relationships and dating also. And this Ace of Clubs Jupiter card has to do with a new idea within ourselves, new inspiration and original ideas. It's the foundation of our ideas and our thinking. And probably one of the most well-publicized criticisms of Drake in the media and within the music industry itself is that he doesn't write his own lyrics, or that he uses a ghostwriter. So this can be seen here through his Jupiter being starved by Saturn in its own card. And we know that Saturn is connected to Drake's enemies through the sixth house cusp. And the eighth house cusp is also in this Jupiter card. And the eighth house cusp has to do with legal battles in Vedic astrology. So they say in Vedic astrology that any planet in the eighth house is actually inherently flawed in some way. And here we see that Drake has his Jupiter card, or his planet Jupiter, in his eighth house in the sign of Pisces. And Jupiter is one of the significators of authorship or publishing. And so we can see that his creative intelligence, Drake's integrity, also is always being called into question through this fifth cusp being conjoined, this Jupiter card. And the eighth house also has to do with trust that we hold in our intimate partnerships, but it can also have to do with cheats or cheating. And Drake has faced, legal battles through his former relationships in the past, including being sued over their voices being used in his songs, or texts they'd communicated with him being used in his rap lyrics. That happened with Marvin's Room, the relationship that he had with a woman named Erica. She ended up suing him over him using her voice in that song. This really shows the eighth house connections to this Ace of Clubs card. And the things in the Jupiter card tend to get averted. So with Ace of Clubs here, his original ideas are being challenged by his enemies, basically. But because Drake has Jupiter here in its own card, it's helping to protect this card and to manifest his creativity steadily anyways. The eighth house also has to do with our longevity, and the fifth house does too in a way, but because it's connected to continuance is what the fifth house has a connection to. Continuance is the ability to be consistent with our inspiration and to continue onwards with something so you go upwards. So having a strong Jupiter in its own card has really helped Drake to manifest these things as well. And it's helped him to weather these storms that he's had to face, such as falls from royalty, which is also a fifth house thing, and then career setbacks, which we know can also be a fifth house thing. And then, of course, there was also the public controversy that Drake was faced with when it was revealed that, he had a secret, quote unquote, secret child, and the paternity of his son is also can be shown through these house cusps being conjoined his Jupiter card, because Jupiter itself has to do with children, and the eighth house is again connected to like secrets and hidden things. And in the cards of truth system, Jupiter is connected to the justice and judgment cards in Tarot as well, which are themes that definitely correlate to this aspect of Drake's life. We can really see the influence of Drake's Saturn card here, and the Uranus conjunction. And actually, a Saturn-Uranus conjunction is pretty rough, because while regular Saturn conjunctions are meant to get easier over time and improve, when Saturn is conjunct an outer planet like Uranus, it suppresses the growth urge of that outer planet. So a person like Drake actually has to make way bigger breakthroughs in life than the average person. And anyone with this conjunction in their chart does, in fact, have to do that. Next, I'm going to talk about Drake's really packed King of Spades card, and that's his Mars card. As you can see, it's his most busy card of all. This King of Spades Mars card is really powerful, because having a king in general on the Mars position is a really powerful card to have, because it's connected to Pluto, and the kings in the deck are ruled by Pluto. So the King of Spades is probably the most painful king, because it represents the primary destructive force of death. So it's probably the most painful king in the deck. And usually this card indicates having to make a lot of personal sacrifices in order to get past any limitations to one's psychological and physical health. So letting go of bad habits affecting your personality and well-being, your lifestyle or environment that are holding you back from achieving success and happiness. So kings, wherever they fall in the deck, indicate the potential to rise above any situation, which simply requires the person having to let go of their egocentricity. And this can make high use of any planetary position. So one of the many reasons Drake has had such longevity in his career in the music industry is because he was willing to allow his ego to be bashed repeatedly by his haters and detractors in the music industry, and even fans, for, labeling him as this soft rapper, getting a lot of heat and ribbing for that through his peers for being an emotional person, always having his feelings on his sleeves, basically, his heart on his sleeve, rather than taking the more traditional route of being like a gangster rapper and more hardcore, the kind of rappers that talk about their lives on the streets and guns and drugs and that kind of thing. Drake was able to steer away from that. And so not only did he own this image, this Seven of Hearts inspiration that he had of using his emotions as his muse, he also didn't get mad about being made fun of, and he instead saw how much it got him ahead in the music industry, and it really got his music trending as well. And even though it was kind of gave him this image as kind of being a joke, he began to purposely play into it and